we have our scheduled interview with the great David Schroeder of Monetary Gold. David, thank you so much for joining us on Right Side Broadcasting Network. I'm great. You know, it's a tough way to start the broadcast, of course, with that tragic news. You know, we know it's good versus evil out there, don't we?
That's just senseless.
It is. It is. I understand there may be some audio technical difficulties. I do hear you here, sir. Okay, I guess it's back up now. But yeah, to your point, it's definitely God versus the devil. That's the root of all of it. Very
Yes.
tough day in Minnesota today. And I know you
Yes.
guys are one of the great sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, Monetary Gold. And, you know, we hear about this. And again, we're going to get back to the news of the day. I know it's not a normal kind of newscast when it comes to that kind of tragedy. But, you know, when it comes to our finances, what is the Genius Act and how does it kind of differ from CBDC?
Well, the Genius Act is a law that was just recently enacted in July and signed by Donald Trump. And basically, a CBDC means it's a central bank digital currency. And so this is a way for the Federal Reserve and the federal government to literally have total control over every person's finances. There is no privacy. There are no restrictions. There's nothing that prohibits them from watching your finances. There's nothing that prohibits them from, if they don't like your politics, you know, they can cut you off. So a CBDC is a pretty wicked way of having control of a country's or a nation's finances. And we just look at China. China has a CBDC, but with their CBDC or their digital currency, they have a social score attached to it. So if they don't like your politics or if you don't do what you're told, the lower you go on that scale, the harder it is for you to transact business. Now with the Genius Act, it's almost the same thing. The only difference is that now your finances, when you use what's called a stable coin, it's used or it's published by public companies, right? Where they will use a blockchain technology, and then you can use that stable coin wherever people take a stable coin. And the secret thing behind this, if you're familiar with gradualism or incrementalism, the sneaky thing behind this particular bill is that what they do is first they get you, oh, hey, it's okay to use, you know, use a stable coin. You can use it at certain locations. And then what they do over time is they get you so used to using it that once a half a generation or more has gone by, so many people now use it that now they say, we now can control people's finances. And there is current legislation pending that's been pending for almost 2 years by Senator Schroeder. And so we know that President Trump signed an executive order saying, no, we don't want a central bank digital currency in the United States. Well, what he's done is he's given the government a workaround to that. And that workaround means now, still using blockchain technologies, the government can still censor your finances. If there is any kind of suspected problem with your finances, maybe they thought you did drugs, maybe they thought you bought a gun you shouldn't have bought, maybe you're doing things that you're not supposed to do. Well, all of that information is now given to the federal government. And because it's blockchain technology, I can go and find all of your transactions. With AI and with other companies that use analytics, they can literally zero in on any type of transaction. So this new Genius Act, which whoever came up with that was actually pretty genius. They found a workaround to control people's finances.
So the question
And
is,
gradually over time, they're going to use that. They're going to get you hooked on that. And here's an example of how they get you hooked. If you remember in the 1930s, we enacted legislation to have Social Security, right? It was supposed to be for one thing only, for you to get Social Security checks. Well, over time, they said, well, you know what? We want to use it for other things. We want to use it so that you can get credit cards, so that you can get a credit card, so that you can open up a bank account, so that you can get an ID or a driver's license or whatever. So gradually over time, what they do is they keep expanding its use. And so that really was pretty genius on somebody's part to come up with such a crazy piece of legislation.
So the question is, does the Genius Act allow for financial surveillance? Can it be used to track purchase and payment activity? And could the act be re-legislated into a CBDC? I know you covered some of that there, but can you fill in some of those blanks?
So there's no more financial privacy when you're using any form of digital currency. All of that can be tracked. If they discover that you're doing something you're not supposed to, they can seize your account and then they can destroy whatever stable coins that you have. And as far as enacting additional legislation, all the Senate and the Congress has to do is come together, enact new legislation, which will then take out the executive order and make that useless. And now they'll have new legislation where the Federal Reserve, the federal government, will then now have 100% control over your finances. There's no privacy. I can go and search your transactions. That's how private it is.
Well, that's always interesting there too. And then what happens though if a stable coin company fails? Does the FDIC insure you at that point?
No, there is zero coverage. There's zero insurance coverage. So if there's a company who is doing good for a couple of years, but then other stable companies are doing better and they finally go out of business because they just can't compete, or they fail. If they fail, right? Maybe the CEO is stealing money under the table or something, right? And that company fails, there is zero insurance coverage. So the FDIC will not step in. They will not cover you up to $250,000. There is zero coverage in that circumstance.
So the question then overall is, how can people reach out to you guys? Because it sounds like that's a great option. And I know that when we talk about monetary gold here at the network, we say things like, it's gold and silver has been really the place to go over the past 5,000 years. I mean, it's something that's really solid. So can you tell us about monetary gold and how people can get that first step and the 1, 2, 3 step of financial peace?
Absolutely. Well, let me back up a little bit. Let me tell you this. There are states who are watching what's going on financially. Currently, there are 13 states that have enacted legislation that allow for gold and silver to be used as legal tender. There are an additional 11 states that currently have pending legislation that has made it through one or the other of their chambers within those state governments. And so the beautiful thing about that is, let's say like Wyoming, I go to Wyoming and I want to buy a new car and I've got a $20 gold piece. Well, the melt value of that $20 gold piece might be $3,600, but the intrinsic value based on, who designed it, when it was made, all those various criteria, it might be worth $5,000. So now I can walk into a car dealer and say, hey, I would like to buy that nice, beautiful Toyota. And here's a $5,000 gold piece that I would like to use as my down payment. That's legal tender. And so one of the beautiful things about monetary gold is we help you kind of diversify your financial assets into gold and silver. And there may be a day when all we have left is a digital currency. Well, there is one particular currency that is 100% private. That's gold and silver. And so I can come and I can transact business with you. You and I, we can do business. We can do it with gold. We can do it with silver. And nobody's privy to what we're doing. And that's the way it should be. And then what I would recommend is picking up the phone and calling Monetary Gold to get the free guide. Because basically what the free guide will do is it explains some of the things that are going on monetarily, in our country and globally. And it will literally give you ways that you can begin to move some of your financial assets out of paper assets into real physical assets. And let's say the stock market crashes, and let's say you've got $100,000 in the stock market. Well, if you had $100,000 in the stock market and it took a huge plunge like in the 1920s, you could literally be wiped out. You could literally lose everything. If you've taken maybe a third of your financial, your money, and put it into a physical asset like gold or silver or palladium, and if that stock market crashed, now your $100,000 may have been reduced to 35,000. But guess what? Your boat hasn't sunk. You're not completely wiped out. You still have a way to transact business and live. And so that's a big deal. So I would highly recommend that they pick up the phone, call, and get that guide. And we spoke about this last week. We do have something going on for RSBN viewers. Until the end of this month, we are going to cover all of your IRA fees for the life of that account, right? Now you have to qualify, but I want you to pick up that phone and I want you to call and speak to one of our specialists, and they'll explain how that works. And if if you've got an IRA or 401k, those assets, those fees, after 10 years, that could literally be $5, $6, $7, $8, $10,000 depending on the size of your account. So that's something that's a huge deal that we've got going on right now. And this is only for our RSBN viewers.
And speaking of RSBN, it's rsbnforthegold.com. Also, you can call 888-617-7994. Also, you see a number. Usually we show it on the screen as well with a different 800 number. There's two numbers you can call there, but rsbnforthegold.com. And David, before I let you go, last question, very serious question now. Do you have any Alvarez guitars behind you?
I do actually.
Really?
I do actually. You can't see it, but I have an Alvarez right there on behind the classical there. I actually do have an Alvarez. What a wild question to be asked. Yes, I do. I've had that Alvarez probably almost 20 years.
Well, Matthew Alvarez. So here's the thing. David, can you ship it to me at no cost? I'm kidding. But that's awesome. I'm glad that you have one of those. David, yes. Thank you so much again. David Schroeder with Monetary Gold. Have a great day. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Yes. Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Bye.